I am Nadine Hackett, the Manager of Corporate Communications here at the Ministry of Labour. I wish to begin by first recognizing Ms. Natalie Willis, Permanent Secretary, acting in the Ministry of Labour, Mr. Gary Joseph, Permanent Secretary, acting Ministry of National Security, Ms. Alana Wheeler, Director, Counter Trafficking Unit, Ministry of National Security, Ms. Kimoy Thomas, Deputy Director, Counter Trafficking Unit, Ministry of National Security, Acting Sergeant Vidish Ramsaran, Authorized Officer, Counter Trafficking Unit, Ms. Sangeeta Bundu, Senior Legal Advisor, Ministry of Labour, Ms. Rosa May Whittier, Director, International Affairs Unit of the Ministry of Labour, Mr. Farouk Mohammed, Labour Inspectorate 2 of the Ministry of Labour, Ms. Sharifa Amon, Legal Research Assistant, Counter Trafficking Unit, Ministry of National Security, and other members of staff here at the Ministry of Labour. Today we are here for the ceremonial signing of the MOU between the Ministry of Labour and the Ministry of National Security towards combating human trafficking, child labour and labour exploitation. At this time I wish to invite Ms. Natalie Willis, our Permanent Secretary here at the Ministry of Labour, to bring remarks.
Yes, it is actually. Mr. Gary Joseph, Acting Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of National Security, Ms. Alana Wheeler, Director, Counter Trafficking Unit of the Ministry of National Security, Ms. Kimoy Thomas, Deputy Director, Counter Trafficking Unit, Ministry of National Security, Acting Sergeant Vidish Ramsaran, Authorized Officer of the CTU, Ministry of National Security, Ms. Sangeeta Bundu, Senior Legal Officer of the Ministry of Labour, Ms. Rosemary Whittier, Director, International Affairs Unit of the Ministry of Labour, Mr. Farouk Mohammed, Labour Inspector 2, Ministry of Labour, Ms. Nadine Hackett, Manager, Corporate Communications Unit of the Ministry, Ms. Sharifa Amon, Legal Research Assistant, Counter Trafficking Unit, Ministry of National Security, other members of staff of the Ministry of Labour. Good afternoon, and welcome to this much anticipated signing ceremony for the execution of the Memorandum of Understanding between the Ministry of Labour and the Ministry of National Security. Human trafficking, child labour and labour exploitation in Trinidad and Tobago are criminal offences and a breach of labour laws, and are almost impossible for a single ministry or agency to combat. Effective responses to the problem of human trafficking call for collaborative, multi-agency, long-term, coordinated, strategic, and well-planned action. Planning for action must be based on a sound assessment of the problem and of the existing capacity to respond. It must be supported by a willingness of the various agencies involved to cooperate with each other. Proper assessment of the situation and planning of the intervention are usually the hallmarks of successful responses. The best assessments are those that are based on existing effective collaboration between the various agencies that need to be part of the response to the problem. Given the nature of the trafficking problem and the crime it involves, the expertise required to address it effectively, and the multiple needs of its victims, it is essential that a multi-agency approach is taken to any initiative. Multi-agency collaboration is not easy, and it takes time and effort for it to work effectively. A management and operational framework therefore needs to be agreed upon that can steer and manage any subsequent specific initiative or intervention. This MOU, which we are going to sign this afternoon, aims to provide information and practical guidance that will allow labour inspectors to detect possible forced labour and trafficking cases, to take effective preventive action, and to assist victims through referrals. Labour inspectors have a crucial role to play in ensuring prevention and elimination of forced labour and human trafficking practices as part of a broader effort to promote decent work. More specifically, this MOU provides our technical units, the counter-trafficking unit of the Ministry of National Security, and the Labor Inspectorate unit with the ammunition that will boost our collective efforts to combat these crimes. This signing ceremony is a milestone for both ministries, as we can all agree that together we can make more significant strides in detecting, solving, and preventing these offenses which breach human and labor rights of our citizens and other nationals. Joint proactive operations increase the effectiveness of law enforcement agencies to combat human traffickers because joint operations allow the investigators to maximize the use of scarce resources for greatest impact. Today, the Ministry of Labor and the Ministry of National Security formalize a collaboration which dates back to, I am told, 2013, in which the Labor Inspectorate Unit and the Counter-Trafficking Unit have been working closely on joint investigation of cases. Our labor inspectors would have also received training in identifying indicators of human trafficking and forced labor, which has thus far assisted inspectors in determining whether or not a particular case or situation amounts to one of forced labor and or human trafficking, thereby enabling referral to the CTU for follow-up action. Labor inspectors play a key role in the identification and protection of victims, as well as in prosecution, as they have at their disposal a wide range of investigative methods. They also have the power to enter work establishments freely without prior notice to conduct inspections. They are also trained to use the power of persuasion to obtain information or achieve compliance. Thus, I am confident that the Labor Inspectorate Unit is a key partner to detection of trafficking victims, and therefore the Ministry of Labor remains committed to this collaboration through its executing arm, the Labor Inspectorate Unit. In closing, I wish to thank everyone who has been instrumental in the execution of this MOU, and the Ministry looks forward to a fruitful collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, P.S. Willis, for your very brief remarks. And of course, we are certainly looking forward to the collaborative impact this initiative will have on the wider community of Trinidad and Tobago. At this time, I'd like to invite to give us a brief address, Mr. Gary Joseph, Permanent Secretary acting in the Ministry of National Security.
There wasn't any need for the step up, right? All right, I just need to take this off. Yeah. All right, good afternoon. Ms. Natalie Willis, Acting Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Labor. Ms. Alana Wheeler, Director, Counter-Trafficking Unit, Ministry of National Security. Ms. Kimoy Thomas, Deputy Director, CTU. Mr. Videsh Ramsaran, Acting Sergeant, attached to the CTU. Ms. Sangita Bundu, Senior Legal Officer, Ministry of Labor. Ms. Roseme Whittier, Director, International Affairs Unit, Ministry of Labor. Mr. Farouk Mohammed, Labor Inspector 2, Ministry of Labor. Ms. Nadine Hackett, Manager, Corpcoms Unit, Ministry of Labor and Chairperson. Ms. Sharifa Aman, Legal Research Assistant, CTU. Members of staff of the Ministry of National Security, other members of staff of the Ministry of Labor. Good afternoon once more. It is my distinct pleasure to be part of this afternoon's signing of a MOU between the Ministry of National Security and the Ministry of Labor. This signing seeks to formalize the relationship between the Ministry of National Security's Counter-Trafficking Unit and the Labor Inspectorate Unit of the Ministry of Labor. It also specifies the roles, functions, and responsibilities of both organizations during their cooperation in human trafficking investigations and information sharing on the subject matter. Ladies and gentlemen, today's signing demonstrates the continued commitment of the government of Trinidad and Tobago to fight against all forms of human trafficking, including labor trafficking. This MOU aims to formalize existing arrangements based on mandates outlined in Section 6 and 12 of the Trafficking in Persons Act to provide forced labor victims with specific services, including understanding of their rights, privacy, housing, care, and appropriate support. Prior to this MOU, an informal arrangement existed between the CTU and the LIU, facilitating collaborative efforts on labor trafficking investigations, training programs, and trafficking awareness sessions. This MOU will strengthen and formalize the existing close working relationship between the CTU and the LIU, while ensuring continuity and the bolstering of best practices in the delivery of support and services for victims of forced labor, especially among the at-risk migrant population. By pooling our limited resources, the CTU and LIU can provide improved services to both local and foreign victims of trafficking. Ladies and gentlemen, this signing is certainly in keeping with recommendations made in the U.S. Department of State Trafficking in Persons 2020 report that Trinidad and Tobago should seek to increase efforts to investigate, prosecute, and convict traffickers. Both organizations will effectively collaborate to prevent and combat trafficking in persons, including children and forced labor. The CTU, as the lead government agency on issues of human trafficking, has trained 90 persons in the Ministry of Labor on identifying indicators of human trafficking. The CTU and LIU also continue to partner to deliver training to various government and non-government agencies. The CTU and LIU also engage in several joint investigations on forced labor and labor violations. These investigations resulted in 5 cases of forced labor being currently before the courts of Trinidad and Tobago. 3 of these 5 cases are awaiting trial in the High Court. In addition to forced labor cases, CTU currently has 9 cases of the worst forms of child labor before the courts of Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, in closing, I can assure you that the Ministry of National Security, through its CTU, will continue progressive efforts to prevent and combat human trafficking in all forms, protect and assist victims, support an efficient investigation and prosecution process, and work closely with the LIU, other government agencies, and NGOs to increase public awareness on human trafficking. I thank you.